eat the food that the king provided for them because that was against his faith actually. So here we see that Daniel made a request, and the Bible tells us to make our requests known to God in Philippians 4:6-7, because He'll give us peace and blessings and stuff. But so King Nebuchadnezzar basically he wanted them to eat his food and drink his wine, but that was against Daniel and the Hebrew boys' faith. So right here we see a form of peer pressure. If other people have been taken captive along with them, that means that they had to do the same thing that Daniel and the Hebrew boys did. They had to eat what the king provided. Some of them conformed to the ways of Nebuchadnezzar, but it tells us that Daniel and the Hebrew boys made up in their mind that they weren't going to conform to the ways of the world. They were going to be in that culture, but they were going to still obey the laws of God. So in essence, they were in the world, but not of the world. So thinking about that and peer pressure, I know that teenagers go through peer pressure, adults go through peer pressure. Everybody has it. And so with me, a couple of my incidents of peer pressure was that I don't curse, right? So like people on my team and in school and everything, they was like, why don't you curse and stuff like that? And I'm like, well, at first it was when I was younger, basically. Uh, I didn't curse because I was scared that God would punish me for it, and like, I really thought that I would die or something like that. But then, I mean, I understand now, but and that was one of the things with peer pressure. And I started questioning, well, why do I have to curse? I mean, I didn't feel like that was something that I needed to do anyway. So. And then one of the bigger things that came on as I got older, actually recently, um, some people are like, okay, I play basketball and it's a spirit going around of lesbianism and stuff like that in the world today, period. But especially in girls basketball. So I was actually trying with that, and that almost made me curse. But I didn't. I didn't.
Amen.
But I mean, you have to know who you are in God. You have to stand for something, or you'll stand for anything. You listen to anything people tell you. You'll be gullible and naive to things that you don't know. But as we see, Daniel and the Hebrew boys, they made a stand for themselves. They already made up in their mind that they weren't going to conform to the ways of the Babylonians. So Daniel, after he made the request not to eat it, Daniel had favor with the prince of the eunuchs. The prince of the eunuchs is the same person as the chief official. He petitioned for himself and interceded as well on behalf of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Um, so right there we see Daniel is praying. He knows where he wants to go, and the Hebrew boys, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they know where they're going to go. Well, God, he's praying to God because he doesn't want to, you know, conform and compromise what he's already learned and been taught. So um, he asks and he prays, and then he asks the chief official a special thing that I'm going to get to next. But because of Daniel's request and the four men's conviction and moral values, the official respected them greatly, so they had favor, especially Daniel. God gave him favor with the chief official, and you'll see later that he has more favor. So in verses 12 through 13 in the first chapter, it says that this is what he requested. Test us for 10 days on a diet of vegetables and water, Daniel said. At the end of the 10 days, see how we look compared to the other young men who are eating the king's rich food. then you can decide whether or not to let us continue eating our diet. So that's what his plan was, which is the second step in knowing where you're going with God. Planning. His plan was to eat vegetables and drink water and not eat the rich foods and drink the wine of the Babylonian Empire. This shows how he was obedient to God, basically, because he stuck with what he knew was right, and he did not conform like the other captives may have.
Amen.
So, right here it says, Daniel's plan proved that God already has a plan made for our life, as a child of God. Like you said earlier in the general session, God has an expected end for us. So we know that God already has a plan laid out. It's foolproof basically. Only way that it gets messed up is when we mess it up. Because God is a God of perfection, so he doesn't make mistakes at all. And this actually reminded me of Joseph. I didn't know she was going to speak about Joseph. But it actually reminded me of Joseph because God had a plan for his life. And though his brothers, they were the obstacle in his life to get to his purpose. But as you can see, it still came through because God's plan is foolproof. And no one can stop God's plan or his will for someone's life. So the plan basically was to eat vegetables and water for 10 days. And there was also purpose in Daniel's plan. God gave it purpose because his course of action showed their loyalty to him. And later on, it would help them to be exalted. And usually, people who want to be exalted are not. But those who like are humble and they're meek, then they're exalted basically. So that was his plan. Now the next step is to proceed. I mean, if you have a plan, you can't just. Why would you plan something and then not go through with it? That makes no sense at all. So after planning, we have to move on God's time. We can't move on our time because God operates outside of time.
That's right. Amen.
Because we're humans, a lot of times we're stuck in this small world and we really can't fathom the fact that God works outside of time. So we don't really truly understand what it means. But God moved on the heart of the chief official and gave him favor with Daniel, and therefore he allowed it to happen. So he gave him the vegetables and the water. And by by doing this, they proceeded. They had to walk out in faith by doing this. They didn't know what the outcome would have been. They could have been emaciated and stuff from not having enough protein or something. But but they had the vegetables and they ended up looking better than all of the other people
That's right.
who
Amen.
ate, who had Nebuchadnezzar provided. So next, God perfects the plan that we have prayed over and we're proceeding with. He perfects it. God perfects the plan because he's perfect himself. So because of their obedience to God and their commitment to the law, God blessed them. After their 3 years of training, like I said earlier, Nebuchadnezzar gave them 3 years to train and to be a part of his council. After their 3 years of training, they were able to go forth into the king Nebuchadnezzar. And he was amazed by by all four of them. How they understood the sciences of the time. They had an aptitude for understanding the literature, which means that they were able to interpret it and quickly learned it. And God gave Daniel a special ability. If you know, like I'm pretty sure everybody knows that if you do something for God, He'll give you something special that you have for your own. Like the song said, "What God has for me, it is for you." But it's not just for you, as in selfish reasons. It's for you to go out and share
Amen.
to the
That's
world
right.
and in the
That's
body of
right.
Christ. So God gave Daniel a special dream, the ability to interpret and understand dreams and visions as well. But when they went to the king, they ended up being 10 times better. God increased them tenfold, basically, over what Nebuchadnezzar already had, which means that they were far superior than any other person that Nebuchadnezzar they gained favor with the king because they were loyal to the king. Amen. Therefore, um, they were able to persevere through their captivity in spite of it all, just like Joseph. And the Bible even tells us, basically, because they suffer peer pressure, and so by doing that, it tells us that the trying of our faith worketh patience, and that we should let patience have her perfect work. All right. And that's what I'm saying, how God perfect the plan that you have prayed over and proceeded to do. So in conclusion, we talked about how you have to pray first in order to know the will of God. You plan to be on the same page with God. You proceed, but you don't go in front of Him. You follow God. You don't go in front of God. Amen. And then He perfects it because it's all a part of His plan. And there's a little story that I want to close with. It is said that in Africa there is a fruit called the taste berry because it changes a person's taste so that everything eaten tastes sweet and pleasant. Sour fruit, even if eaten several hours after eating the taste berry, it becomes sweet and delicious. Gratitude is the taste berry of Christianity. And when our hearts are filled with gratitude, nothing that God sends us seems unpleasant to us. A sorrowing heart, sweeten your grief with gratitude. Burdened soul, lighten your burden by singing God's praises. Disappointed one, dispel your loneliness by making others grateful. Sick one, grow strong in soul, thanking God that He loves you enough to chasten you. Keep the taste berry of gratitude in your hearts, and it will do for you what the taste berry of Africa does for the African. Thank you. Amen.